Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, here on this Thursday afternoon. No football this Thursday, unfortunately, but there is a lot of stuff to talk about that is related to football. So, excuse me. For the first segment, we're going to talk about how, despite a month after supposedly taking the job, Bill Belichick still has not signed a contract with the University of North Carolina. So we're going to talk about that in the first segment. Then in the second segment, we're going to talk about the most likely awards winners for the NFL. And we'll start with the MVP, then we'll go down to Offensive Player of the Year, this, that, and the other, all that. We are going to talk about the most likely position that Travis Hunter is going to play when he enters into the NFL draft, because, depending on what position you play, it also changes the workouts that you do. So that's a little bit important as to what position he's going to enter as. And then in the fourth segment, we're going to do a quick NBA recap of all of the games that took place yesterday. So tune into that if you are interested. That's going to happen in the fourth segment, excuse me. We also have the special fifth segment, so tune into that as well. Before I begin, I would like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether it's a hot take, burning question, something that you're just dying to share. We're all ears, and if you really want your comment and or question to get noticed, then I recommend using Super Chat. You just click on the $ below the chat box. If that's not really your thing, then you can always use the link displayed below the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net. Either or really helps the show. So let's go right ahead and get down into this first segment, So as I've reported before, and I'm sure most of the sports world already knows, Bill Belichick, it's been said that he is going to take the job as University of North Carolina's head coach, and starting his career as a college coach in the NCAA, right? Like, this has been known. This was a thing that was revealed to us about a month ago. But despite this news breaking out a month ago, apparently there are now reports going around saying that Bill Belichick hasn't officially signed a deal with UNC yet. So despite talking about it and despite that decision already being made, he still hasn't written it down on paper. And this could be a really big problem going into the future, both for UNC fans and as well as NFL fans, because now we have no idea whether or not Bill Belichick was actually, serious about this move to North Carolina. And there was, this wouldn't have been like the first time that he's done this before, because there were talks about him being interested in the Jets. He held out for a little bit and then ultimately decided that he wasn't going to join them. So it's not like Bill Belichick is immune to changing his decisions. And I mean, for the biggest problem that I have with this is that now the door is wide open for Bill Belichick to accept any job from either an NFL organization or an NCAA program. Either one of those he's open to. And the first thing that immediately comes to mind is the possibility that Bill Belichick could end up being the coach for the Raiders. Like, this completely changes the outlook on which teams are looking for who and where the most likely candidates for NFL coaching positions are going to be, now that Bill Belichick is apparently open because he has not signed anything yet. Like, now there are talks that Bill Belichick could end up being the head coach for the Raiders, and Deion Sanders is going to be the head coach for the Dallas Cowboys. And it's been said that Deion will accept the offer if the Dallas Cowboys present it to him, but I think it's better for Deion to stay on Colorado. Again, I just think that's just my opinion. I think he's already established a good culture there, and he should stay there a little bit longer. But, being in the NFL, that just means way more money for you. Excuse me. Now, This report comes from Yahoo Sports. I feel like I should be the one mentioning this. Sources told CBS Sports and UNC confirmed this week that there is no fully executed and signed contract between Bill Belichick and UNC, and industry sources say that could lead to a legal gray area about how much, if any, of a buyout there would be if Belichick left to go back to coaching professional NFL teams. So Belichick, this offer is like completely off the table. And what makes this even more weird is how Bill Belichick is already doing the usual recruiting steps, trying to get competent athletes to join the program. And it's weird how it's like he's making all of these moves, but he still hasn't officially signed a paper saying that he was going to be the coach of this team. And that's the biggest problem. And really, it's like, what happens if Bill Belichick ultimately decides to coach an NFL team and leave UNC in the dust? Like, what happens there? It's not like it's a breach of contract because they haven't signed anything yet. So theoretically, he could end up taking the job as the Raiders head coach, because I know Tom Brady offered that to him, which is another thing that really bugs me, because this makes that offer as legitimate of an offer as it can be. It completely changes everything. Like, when I heard that report, I was thinking, okay, well, that's not really going to do much, because I'm sure Belichick has already signed a contract, and he's not going to go ahead and be the head coach for the Raiders. But now that this has leaked out saying that he hasn't signed anything, that really makes it a legitimate possibility. Now, apparently there are several University of North Carolina fans and some friends of mine who aren't really worried about these reports saying that since Bill Belichick is out there recruiting, he wouldn't be wasting his time if he wouldn't be talking to these young players already if he didn't have any intention of coaching them in the future or influencing them in their decisions on where to transfer to if he's looking for athletes in the transfer portal. Belichick has apparently a $10 million buyout at North Carolina, but if he holds out, that buyout ends up dropping to $1 million in this summer. As the report notes, the lack of a signed deal could lead to an NFL team to believe that Belichick would have little to no buyout at North Carolina at the moment if the deal isn't signed. But there's no indication that Belichick is interested in the NFL at this point, which is what North Carolina has going for them. He hasn't been officially interviewed by anyone this hiring cycle, and the longer he goes without an interview, the less and less likely it becomes that he'll be approached by an NFL team. Plus, the Michael Lombardi ended up tweeting something out saying Bill is recruiting in DC today and Baltimore tomorrow. His focus is on North Carolina football, hiring staff members, and developing the team. The NFL isn't an option, so please stop making it one. Thank you. That was what Michael Lombardi went ahead and tweeted out. So obviously, he's just trying to confirm that Bill Belichick's focus is with the team and not with anyone else. In his introductory news conference, Belichick said he didn't come to North Carolina to leave, and as he continues to build his staff, it's pretty clear that the coach is sticking to those words for the time being. But again, would not be surprised if he ends up leaving the team. It would be really mean, obviously, and very self-centered if that's what he ends up doing. But again, the reports are saying that the people close to him are saying that just because he hasn't signed it doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to leave. So I guess until they start to panic, then there's no need for anyone else that's a fan of the University of North Carolina to start panicking, because it doesn't seem like this is going to be the end of the world. But that's all that I have in this first segment. So now we're going into the second segment where I talk about the NFL players who are most likely going to win awards this season, Offensive Player of the Year, MVP, things like that. So we're going to talk about that right after this short break, so be sure to stay tuned if you guys are interested.
feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, we are going to talk about the most likely NFL award winners going into the end of this season. Given all that we have, the regular season is concluded. So now that that season is concluded, we can actually come up with some, I guess you could say, accurate predictions as to who's going to win what award. So we might as well start off with the big one, the MVP. I think Lamar Jackson has easily cemented and secured the MVP award this year. A lot of people, they might think it's, Josh Allen. He should be the player that deserves the MVP. But if you look at the passing yards, if you look at the amount of completions, if you look at the touchdowns, and you look at the interceptions, Lamar Jackson is basically better in every single one of those categories. And there's really no argument for which one is the MVP, really. I mean, Jackson is having a better statistical season than his previous two MVP awards, and he's had ridiculous career highs, including in passing yards, 3,955, passing touchdowns at 39, and a passer rating of 121.6. He has the best passer rating in the NFL, and he's just an overall fantastic dual threat at the quarterback position. And really, that's really like all you need to be that competent of a quarterback. Just lead in the stats and make it to the playoffs and win a couple games. Obviously, there are going to be a lot of people that think if the Bengals had a better record, that Joe Burrow would have won the MVP, and he most likely would have. But again, you have to have you have to be able to win. And do things like that. Like, if you're not winning, then the chances of you being selected for an award are very, very slim. Now, the offensive player of the year, now this is just, this could be any player that plays, it could be wide receiver, it could be quarterback, although it's less likely that they are. And in this season, I think that the offensive player of the year is going to be Saquon Barkley. As we know, Saquon ended up reaching 2,000 yards per scrimmage on the last week that he played. And hold on just 1 second. I'm looking at some more stats with Saquon. Aside from actually helping the Eagles make the playoffs, he became just the 9th player in the history of the NFL to rush for over 2,000 yards in a single season. And obviously, that's just incredible for what he's been able to do. And being coming from New York and still being even more dominant than what you already thought you were and what many people thought you were is something that's very impressive and something that's very difficult to do. So I think he has the best chances of being named the Offensive Player of the Year. He's most likely not going to win the MVP, even though that was a debate for like 1 week and then that was it. Because, like, simply put, there's not going to be a single running back in the NFL that's more valuable to a team than a really good quarterback. That's just never going to happen. Then the next award on this list, the Defensive Player of the Year, it's probably going to go to TJ Watt. And he's on the Steelers. He's a player that sort of makes these game-changing plays and game-winning plays. You could argue that he's been Pittsburgh's most valuable player on defense for a very long time. He has 11.5 sacks and 19 tackles for loss, both of them are ranked at top 5 in the NFL, and he has a league-high 6 forced fumbles, which is unbelievable and is very impressive for somebody on the defensive side of the ball. And he's a pretty good reason why the Steelers keep winning a bunch of games. They're unable to do that in the playoffs, of course, but in the regular season, this team they're a great team defensively, and they're able to, despite not having a really potent offense, they're able to stay in the game long enough thanks to their defense. And Broncos star Patrick Surtain II is another worthy candidate of this award. But I think, since TJ Watt has the, I guess you could say, popular name, and a lot more people know him, that'll influence people I feel like that would encourage more people to vote for him, just because, he does have a rather popular name. Now, the next player and the next award on this list is going to be Offensive Rookie of the Year, and who else but Jaden Daniels, the quarterback for the Commanders. And he's easily been arguably one of the best quarterbacks in this league, and he already has a playoff win. But outside of the playoffs, he's helped his team win in close situations throughout a majority of the season. He leads rookie quarterbacks in basically every single major category. He set the NFL's all-time record for rushing yards for a rookie quarterback at 864. He's been the best and most consistent rookie quarterback this season. And most importantly is the fact that he led the Commanders to make it to the postseason for the first time in a very long time. And Washington, they finally have their starting quarterback and their franchise player. So it's only going to look up for them as the years go on. Again, he has just been a phenomenal quarterback in this league. Now, Defensive Rookie of the Year, that is probably going to go to Jared Verse, the outside linebacker for the Rams. And the Rams, they decided to use their top 2 2024 draft picks on Verse and a defensive lineman named Braden Fisk. So it was meant to try and fill the void from losing Aaron Donald. And it's nearly impossible to replace Aaron Donald, of course, but both rookies have done a really good job and are in the Defensive Rookie of the Year conversations. Now, Verse is one of the Rams' best defensive players, and in his first season, already being regarded as one of your team's best defensive players is a very admirable thing. And through his first 16 career games, he registered second in most pressures with 72. And he came into Week 17 as the only rookie to have multiple games with 3 or more quarterback hits in the season, and the first rookie to accomplish this since Micah Parsons back in 2021. And Parsons ended up winning NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year in that season. So, no real shocker if he ends up winning this award. And now, Comeback Player of the Year, I just think it's Joe Burrow. I mean, he's had one of the best QB seasons. It's just the defense that's really the issue. Now, again, I think everyone in the world agrees that if the Bengals weren't 8-8, then Burrow would be in MVP conversations. Despite the Bengals' place in the standings, Burrow's place in NFL passing yards and touchdown passes, he's number one in both of them. It's it's a career high in both, of course, but his passing yards were 4,641, and he had 42 passing touchdowns. So he won Comeback Player of the Year in 2021 after he returned from a season-ending knee injury. Obviously when you return from an injury, you have a really good chance of being named the Comeback Player of the Year. But since he's the franchise quarterback, he should be the front runner to win the trophy again this year after bouncing back from a wrist injury that cut his 2023 season short. So he's coming off of a year where he was injured, and I believe he hurt his throwing hand. But of course, we can clearly see that he is just fine and playing some of the best football out there. But again, really unfortunate that his team couldn't end up being in the winning column. Probably would have been one of the more dangerous teams in this year if they had a solid defense, because with Joe Burrow scoring as efficiently as he is, I mean, that's just a very difficult team to beat if they have a really solid defense, because it's like that's always been the only problem for the Bengals all of last season, the fact that their defense would just constantly hold them down. And finally, the last award, Coach of the Year, it's most likely going to go to Kevin O'Connell for the Vikings, because again, this is a team that has fooled us several times, and this is now a team that has fooled us into thinking that Sam Darnold was a competent quarterback because of how great they were all season. They were a 14-win team. They're also the first 14-win team to lose in the wild card round, by the way. But really, the biggest accomplishment is making this Vikings team look like a competent team despite having Sam Darnold at quarterback. Like, that is really like the biggest surprise, at least in my opinion. The fact that Sam Darnold was able to make this team look competent, and the fact that he looked competent at the quarterback. I mean, he ended up recording 4,153 passing yards, 35 passing touchdowns with a passer rating of 106. Like, that is ridiculous. They have a top 5 passing offense and a top 5 scoring defense, which is also just amazing coaching. And really, the fact that a lot of people were thinking that this was one of the best teams in the NFL is absolutely incredible, and that should not be taken lightly, because we know Sam Darnold is a joke. And I don't, no disrespect, but again, yes, he is a little bit of a joke. Like, especially after this performance, like, he lost out on so much money, it's not even funny. But that's all that I have in this second segment, talking about the award winners. Now we're going to go into the third segment, where I talk about the most likely position that Travis Hunter is going to enter in this year's draft. So I'll be right back after this short break.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, we are going to be talking about the most likely, like, what position Travis Hunter is most likely going to enter in with in this year's draft. And obviously we know he's rather ambidextrous in terms of playing positions in football. He is he is definitely the only player who has been able to play both positions as competently as he can. I mean, hold on just 1 second. Let me just adjust the size of this real quick. Give me 1 second. All right, there we go. So again, Travis, he's ambidextrous, so he can play ambidextrous. It basically means like you can throw with both hands, like you're dominant with both your left and your right hand. So not really ambidextrous, but in the sense that he can do things with both hands, but in the sense that he can play offense and defense. And that was one of the not really issues, but sort of the expectations if you are going to draft him. Deion Sanders completely he thinks that Travis can play both offense and defense at an NFL caliber level, but obviously when you're going into the draft, you have to pick a position. It's not like you can do it's not like one workout ultimately determines an NFL player. It's like you have to decide what workouts to do and which workouts better fit you. Like, he could end up, for all intents and purposes, Travis Hunter is the first college player that has an option of being able to enter in as multiple positions. He could either enter as a wide receiver and do wide receiver drills, or he could enter as a cornerback and do cornerback drills. So obviously it still remains to be seen whether or not the team that ends up drafting him is going to allow him to play both offense and defense. That still remains to be seen. But as of right now, it seems like he's going to enter into this draft at the cornerback position. Now that the Giants are not even in the top two spots in the draft, it seems more and more likely that the number 1 and the number 2 teams that pick in the NFL are going to go at the quarterback position. So that would mean that Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders are going to be off the board. And somebody like Travis Hunter is going to most likely still be on the board if you are the Giants and if you're looking for a studded player to play for your franchise, who is not just a competent cornerback, but also a rather competent wide receiver. And it is a position that the Giants do need. They do need a solid corner, and they also could use a solid wide receiver. And assuming they let Travis Hunter do both, again, that's not entirely sure, because as we know, MetLife Stadium plagues many players with injuries. So and it's mainly because of the field that they use, the turf that they use for that field. And if Travis Hunter ends up playing both offense and defense, that's a more likely chance that he gets hurt doing that, as opposed to just playing one position. But again, he won the Heisman for a reason, and a number of NFL coaches as well, they believe that Travis Hunter's main position is cornerback, and that's going to be the main position he plays in the NFL. The debate has been, it's been talked about repeatedly, and it's going to continue to be discussed as the 2025 NFL draft gets closer. No idea what position he's going to enter in, if he's going to be a wide receiver, if he's going to be a cornerback. At the college level, he was at the top of both of his positions, so I really hope that whichever team ends up drafting him allows him to play both positions, so that way he could be a star in both of them. He also ended up receiving the Biletnikoff Award, which is given to the nation's most outstanding wide receiver, him. And he was also awarded the Bednarik Award for being a top defensive player in the country. And of course, the Heisman Trophy, that's the best trophy of all of them. And he's he was the best at his position on both sides of the ball, putting himself in pole position to be a top selection in the draft. And he recently stated his belief that he'd be the first overall pick in this draft, and how each team views him will likely determine where Hunter goes in this draft and what position he is going to play. So let's just say, for argument's sake, he falls over to Jacksonville with the 5th pick. Hunter could arguably benefit the defense more so than the offense, since Brian Thomas Jr. is already a competent wide receiver for the Jaguars, and he had a tremendous rookie year for them. So Travis Hunter could be used to try and make better of one of the NFL's worst passing defenses. So whatever team picks him will be subject to immediate question about how they'll deploy the Heisman winner, and whether he'd be doing offense, whether he'd be doing defense, or whether he'd be doing both. There is currently a 3-1 count of NFL teams I've surveyed who have Hunter graded as a full-time cornerback who can take some snaps at wide receiver, which is going to be very interesting. The results, while only taken from 4 teams, and is also unclear if any of the teams surveyed owned a top selection in this draft, they present an idea that hasn't been done effectively for an extended period of time in the NFL, and the last to pull off a stunt like this was Hunter's college head coach, Deion Sanders, and of course all the way before that in '96, while the Dallas Cowboys had Deion Sanders and they earned All-Pro honors on the defensive side of the ball as a cornerback, the Cowboys also had a package of plays designed for him on offense as a receiver, and he ended up finishing with 36 catches for 476 yards and a touchdown across 16 games. And obviously we know the volume wasn't huge, which Hunter expressed he believes he can manage at the next level. So, I mean, if you have a player who's confident he can play both, I say you should let him play both. Now, there's obviously, the possibility that he might be a little bit in over his head, but I don't think he would really put himself at that much risk if he wasn't confident he could be the first player to do both. And I have full confidence in that. Let me know in the comments if you guys think he can do both, or maybe you guys would rather see him at one primary position going into the NFL and not playing both positions, both cornerback and wide receiver. But that's all that I have in this 3rd segment. So now we're going to go into the 4th segment where I talk about the NBA games that took place yesterday. So I'll be right back after the short break. Be sure to stay tuned if you guys are interested.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the 4th segment, of the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this 4th segment, we are going to talk about the NBA games that took place yesterday. There were a lot of blowouts in these ones, a lot of surprising upsets. Well, not really. I think there were some surprising upsets going into yesterday's game, and the biggest surprise, at least in my opinion, was the Brooklyn Nets losing to the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, the Nets, they ended up losing by a staggering 67-126. That is almost a 60-point deficit that the Nets were suffering from, and it was absolutely disgusting. And this was a team that has said before that they aren't really going to be putting their best lineup out there, and that definitely seems to be the case with this lineup, because good lord, losing by 60 is inexcusable at any level. It does not matter. That is absolutely disgusting. Now, James Harden had 21 points and 11 assists. Kawhi had 23 points. And Norman Powell had 18 points. This was a generational beatdown. Like, there's no other way to really put it other than, like, it really didn't seem like the Nets were trying to win in this game. Like, it was embarrassing. Now, the next matchup that we are going to talk about is the Lakers being able to beat the Heat. Now the Lakers are 21-17, and they stand in the 6th spot of the entire Western Conference. LeBron had 22 points, 9 assists, 2 steals, because of course he did. Anthony Davis had 22 and 11, and Roy Hachimura had 23. Austin Reeves had 14 points and 14 assists in that game as well. And obviously, the Lakers, they were coming off of a really bad stretch of losing games. Now, beating the Heat with Tyler Hero dropping 34 points is obviously a really good booster for their morale. Bam Adebayo didn't really play well. There was still no Jimmy Butler, as we're still expecting him to get traded. He has not been traded yet. But another game that ended up happening was the Knicks going up against the 76ers. The Knicks, they played the 76ers in overtime, where the Knicks ended up winning in the end. Now, there was Tyrese Maxey and there was Paul George, but Tyrese ended the game with 33 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. Paul George had 26 points and 6 assists, along with 3 steals. And Kelly Oubre Jr. had 16 points and 10 rebounds. Now, obviously, this wasn't enough to go up against Mikal Bridges and his 23 points, Jalen Brunson and his 38 points, as well as Josh Hart and his 10 points, 12 assists, and 17 rebounds. Again, great game coming in from Josh Hart, getting a triple-double, and also being able to get 4 steals along with that as well. And, I mean, obviously, 38 points from Jalen Brunson is 38 points. Now, the Pelicans, they ended up beating the Dallas Mavericks to get their 10th win in the season. The Mavericks, they did not have Kyrie. They did not have Luka Doncic. They did have just Klay Thompson, but Klay Thompson didn't do anything. Klay ended 5 for 12 from the field with only 12 points, was 2 of 9 from 3, and Daniel Gafford was the leading scorer for the Mavericks, ended up shooting 12 for 13 with 27 points. But again, the Pelicans, they ended up winning this game. CJ McCollum only had 11 points, but Trey Murphy III had 24 points and 10 rebounds. And DeJounte Murray ended the game with 30 points, 7 assists, and 7 rebounds. And again, they only won by 3 points. The final score was 119-116, but still an embarrassing way to go out if you are the Dallas Mavericks. Now, the Warriors, they end up evening out their record at 20-20, and they ended up beating the Timberwolves 116-115. Steph Curry had 31 in this game. There was also Trace Jackson Davis, who had 15 rebounds. Andrew Wiggins ended with 24 points, and coming off the bench, Buddy Hield had 18 points. It was, again, just a 1-point win. They won 116-115 against the Timberwolves. Anthony Edwards had 28. DiVincenzo also had 28, but it still wasn't enough to go up against the Golden State Warriors. And Julius Randle only had 17. He only played 27 minutes, however. And, I mean, it's not like he really shot the ball that well. He went 8 for 18, which is actually very terrible, considering how he only had 17 points. Now, the Celtics, they ended up playing against the Raptors. Excuse me. The Raptors, they ended up winning 110-97. And whenever the Celtics lose, it's always very surprising. But more often than not, it's usually because Jason Tatum does not play good enough. Jason Tatum ended with only 16 points, 5 for 15 from the field, and he did get 10 rebounds and 7 assists. But again, that is a little bit lackluster on the points production coming in from Tatum. Porzingis ended with 18 points and 8 rebounds. Jaylen Brown had 10 points and 7 rebounds, also a little bit lackluster. Derek White only ended with 6 points, which again is a little bit actually not even a little bit, way less than mediocre for Derek White. And the expectations that I have for him going 1 for 7 was definitely not on my parlay pool whatsoever. That was absolutely disgusting. And again, this is sort of like, I know it's I said that the Celtics losing is always surprising, but this is also just, a big reason why they end up losing is because, and I haven't really talked about this much, was that this is a team that relies heavy on the three-point shot. I mean, of the 91 shot attempts that they took, 46 of them were three-pointers. So this is a team that could easily win a lot of playoff games by taking all of these threes, or they could lose a lot of playoff games by taking all of these threes. It's one or the other with these kinds of teams. Now, the Memphis Grizzlies, they ended up beating the San Antonio Spurs. They won 129-115, and Victor Wembanyama got dunked on twice, I believe. Once by Zach Edey, and then another after the whistle sounded by Ja Morant. Ja ended with 21 points and 12 rebounds. Not 12 rebounds, 12 assists. And if you really want to count that posterizing dunk, he ended with 23 points. So, Victor Wembanyama had 13 and 12 in this one. Also recorded 8 blocks, which is very impressive. Chris Paul only had 8 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists. Also had 5 personal fouls. Stephon Castle ended with 26 points, and Keldon Johnson ended with 17 points. Now, on the Grizzlies side, there was also Desmond Bane, who had 21, Jaren Jackson Jr., who had 19, and off the bench, Santi Aldama had 20 points and 10 rebounds. So, just overall, very good performance coming in from the Grizzlies and that team. The Hawks, they ended up beating the Chicago Bulls, despite Nikola Vucevic dropping 14 points and 16 rebounds. Zach LaVine ended with 15, Kobe White ended with 16, and on the Hawks side, there was no Trae Young in this one, but still no problem. Keaton Wallace ended the game with 27 points. Dyson Daniels ended the game with 18 points. Let's see. Clint Capella had 11 points and 10 rebounds. And Okongwu had 14. And Daquan Plowden had 19. Now, the next game on this list is the Magic going up against the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, surprisingly, the Bucks, they actually were able to beat the Orlando Magic again, even, despite the fact that the Magic have Paolo Banchero. Paolo had 22 points. Cole Anthony had 11, and Wendell Carter Jr. had 12. But on Milwaukee's side, Damian Lillard had 30, Giannis had 26 and 11, and Brook Lopez had 13. And off the bench, Bobby Portis and Chris Middleton both ended with 14 points. So, great performance coming in from Milwaukee in there. And in another surprising performance, the Houston Rockets ended up beating the Denver Nuggets. Jalen Green had 34 points, Sengun had 29 and 8. Fred VanVleet had 16 points, and off the bench, Cam Whitmore had 16 as well. Now, Jamal Murray had 22, Russell Westbrook had 17. There was no Nikola Jokic, so that is the reason why they ended up losing. And finally, the Hornets, they ended up playing against the Jazz, and the Hornets ended up winning 117-112. LaMelo Ball had 27, 9, and 6. Miles Bridges had 25 and 10, and Mark Williams had 31 and 13. Brandon Miller had 20 points, and on the Jazz side, the only player who had 20 was Keontae George, who had 26, 6, and 2. So that's all that I have for this fourth segment. So now we're going to go into the fifth segment where I talk about Quinn Ewers and all of the money in NIL that he ended up passing up just so he can enter this draft. So I will be right back after this short break. And we are back with the fifth segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fifth and final segment, we are going to talk about Quinn Ewers and all of the money that he ended up passing up. Because as we know now, these college players, they end up getting paid. They get paid a lot of money to play football and to... Hold on just one second. Let me just stretch that out. There we go. But they get paid so much money to play football that now the college players are getting some benefits in playing football as well. Some of the most paid college athletes make around, like, they could make $100,000 to again, and those are just like the not so popular ones, but the really popular ones are making like NFL level contracts of like $8 million or something like that. And apparently, as reports are going, we know that Quinn Ewers declared for the NFL draft, but he has also received $8 million in NIL from an unknown program to transfer from Texas, but he decided to declare for the NFL draft instead. And that's a lot of money to turn down, especially in a quarterback class that's rendered as a weak quarterback class. It's not, if you are going to get picked, it's probably going to be very, very late, or maybe not even picked at all. Carson Beck was expected to go in the NFL draft, and he chose to go to the transfer portal instead. So there must be a reason why that was an option there too. The only two quarterbacks that are actually, like, I feel worth being drafted are Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. And even then, a lot of people are still a bit iffy on Shedeur being drafted. But according to sources close to Ewers, he said he turned down the offer due in part to his desire to end his career as a Texas Longhorn. Now, Ewers' his high school football coach at South Lake Carroll was Riley Dodge, who seemed to confirm that the quarterback's loyalty is to the University of Texas, telling 24/7 Sports. Texas was the only place he wanted to play college football. He wanted to leave Texas in good standing. So, according to Brown, Ewers has earned a total of $6 million in NIL money during his time at Texas, plus another $1.4 million signing with GT Sports Marketing in 2021. And he reportedly could have earned more than all of them combined in just 1 year had he transferred, but he is ultimately going to try his hand at getting drafted. Now, they have Ewers ranked as the number 102 overall player and number 8 quarterback in the 2025 NFL draft. So even with Cam and Shedeur off the table, there are still 4 other quarterbacks, or there are still a couple other quarterbacks that are thought of to be a little bit better than you going into this draft. And the scouting department ranked Ewers, again, being ranked at number 102, that is not a very high rank, and only at number 8 at the quarterback position, that's also rather low in my opinion. I'm not entirely sure which team would end up wanting to draft him, but if the ranking holds up, it would mean that Ewers is on track to be an early fourth round pick. But 2 NFL scouts told Brown that they expect Ewers to come off the board between the end of the first round and the beginning of the third round. Even if Ewers goes as high as the late first, his rookie contract would only be worth somewhere around $13 million over a 4-year period. And that would mean Ewers is most likely going to turn down significantly more money to play collegiately than he is going to make in the NFL next season, which is very, very surprising in my opinion, right? Because, in college, you have an opportunity to make more money than if you were to be in the NFL. That is a crazy concept to me. As a head coach, that sounds crazy too, but as a player, being able to make more money as a collegiate athlete than you would as an NFL athlete, I think that's just incredible. First of all, that is crazy, the kind of world that we live in now, where collegiate athletes could be making more in the college level as opposed to going professional. But that's something crazy to think about. That is really ridiculous to think about. Like, you're making more money as a college student than you are as a professional athlete. Like, I mean, and technically you are considered a professional athlete when you are playing in college, but like, that is just crazy to me. Now, Ewers is 21 years old, and he originally committed to Ohio State in 2020, but after receiving no playing time in 2021, he decided to transfer over to Texas. And Ewers went on to be a 3-year starter for the Longhorns. He went 27-9 in his 36 starts. He led the Longhorns to the college football playoffs in the past 2 seasons. He completed 69% of his passes for 3,400, and 79 yards, along with 22 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. He followed it up by completing 65% of his passing attempts for 3,472 yards, 31 touchdowns, and 12 picks in this season. And he led Texas to the college football playoffs. He led them to win over at Clemson and Arizona State this season. But obviously, as we know, the Longhorns ended up falling short to Ohio State in the semifinals. But aside from that, that's all that I really have in this 5th segment. And that is it for the show. Thank you so much for tuning in to the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. As usual, we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether it's a hot take, burning question, something you're dying to share. We're all ears, and if you really want your comment and or question to get noticed, I recommend using Super Chat. You just click on the $ below the chat box, or you can use the link displayed below the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net. You can do either or. It really helps the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee